Most writers will agree to the opinion that the horror genre is the hardest to write because you have the paradoxical task of scaring them while holding down their attention enough to finish the entire book. Perhaps this is the reason Stephen King reigns supreme as the undisputed king of horror. His horror novels are so popular that they have been adapted time and time again into different forms of media. So let us look into some underrated adaptations of King's scariest works today. Before we continue, please tap on that subscribe button if you are not a subscriber yet. It's free, we promise. The Dark Half. Thad Beaumont had excellent writing skills and showed great promise as a child, but every time he wrote, sparrows screeched. One day, Thad collapsed with a headache, and it was found that he had absorbed his twin in the womb, and that was what caused the headache. Once he had the fetus removed, his headaches and the screaming of the sparrows stopped. 23 years later, we see Thad as an established writer of highbrow literature and moonlighting as a mystery and thriller writer under the name George Stark. After a journalist finds out about it and threatens him about publicizing the info, Thad decides to lay the Stark name to rest and has a mock burial. Unknown to Thad, Stark materializes, and it is found out that he is an unholy mixture of Thad's parasitic twin brother and the pen name. Stark goes on a killing spree and kidnaps Beaumont's family to intimidate Beaumont into writing more as George Stark. As Beaumont starts to write, Stark begins to heal. Hearing the sparrows approaching, he tricks George into writing the book. Seeing that he is distracted, Beaumont attacks. Their fight ends with the sparrows tearing George apart and carrying him off to the other side as agents of death. The plot is so well crafted that we can hardly give it justice in this video. King was inspired to write the story The Dark Half in 1989 after his pen name Richard Bachman was revealed. George A. Romero adapted this onto the big screen, delivering a psychological twist with King's classic scares. If you liked Hitchcock's The Birds, there's a good chance you'll like The Dark Half. (1408). During his book tour, Mike Enslin, a cynical writer who writes about the supernatural despite his disbelief in them, receives an anonymous postcard warning him not to enter room 1408 in the Dolphin Hotel. Taking it as a challenge, Mike requests room 1408 at the Dolphin. Manager Gerald Olin tries to discourage him by telling him that no one has lasted more than an hour in that room for the last 95 years, and it has a death count of 56. Mike does not back down, and Olin reluctantly lets him in. Within seconds of him entering the room, a countdown begins from 60 minutes, and Mike begins to see flashbacks of Katie, his dead daughter, and his terminally ill father. The temperature begins to rise, and Mike tries to contact his estranged wife Lily, but the spiked temperature triggers the sprinkler system and destroys his laptop. The room shakes violently, and Mike crashes into the photo of a ship. When he wakes up, he finds himself in the hospital, recovering from a surfing accident. He reconciles with Lily and writes about his experience. On the way to hand over the manuscript, he recognizes the construction crew as staff of the Dolphin, which pushes him to realize that he is still trapped in the room. The clock sets back to 60 again, and a hotel operator calls Mike, telling him that he can either choose to relive the hour over and over again or hang himself with a noose. Mike refuses to accept defeat and sets the whole room on fire. Does Mike survive the fire? Watch Michael Hafstrom's 1408 to find out. Released in 2007, 1408 is an adaptation of King's short story written in 1999. Often overshadowed by the more famous haunted hotel in The Shining, 1408 does not get the recognition it deserves. But if you like surrealism and evil rooms, add it to your binge list immediately. Maximum Overdrive. When Earth crosses the tail of the comet Rhea M, all machines of the planet spring to life. Cars, trucks, ATM machines, electric knives, gas pumps, all begin to attack humans, either using them to stay animate, like a truck that threatens to kill the humans if they do not fill fuel into it, or killing them mercilessly. As people begin to get murdered or enslaved, a small group of survivors decides to head to Haven, an island where no motorized vehicles are allowed. Bill, one of the survivors, correctly theorizes that the comet is being used by aliens to effectively wipe out humanity for their arrival. As the survivors fight their way into Haven, A Soviet space platform destroys the UFO hiding in the comet's trail, and all of Earth's machines go back to being inanimate. Stephen King's first and last directing gig, Maximum Overdrive, derives from his short story Trucks. The movie was so bad that it got nominated for 2 Golden Raspberry Awards, and King admitted to having been coked out of his mind while directing it. The kind of movie that is so bad it's good again, Maximum Overdrive is a great camp horror flick. The epic soundtrack composed by King's favorite band AC/DC is not to be missed. Dreamcatcher. Lawrence Kasdan's Dreamcatcher is based on King's 2001 novel, which revolves around 4 friends: Pete, Jonesy, Beaver, and Henry. The 4 had been blessed with telepathic powers after saving Douglas Cavill, fondly called Duddits, from bullies. During one of their annual hunting trips, they rescue a sick man named Rick McCarthy and realize that they are now at the mercy of the alien parasitic worm that was inside him. The leader of the aliens, Mr. Gray, possesses Jonesy's body and tries to infect the water supply with alien larvae to take over the world. Will the telepathic friends be able to stop an alien invasion? Or will Mr. Gray and his alien friends take over the world for good? Watch the movie to find out. Dreamcatcher barely earned half of its budget at the box office and is considered a flop, because of which the movie often flies under the radar. The movie's bad reception wounded Kasdan's career, preventing many of his directorial dreams. But don't let these facts deter you from watching Dreamcatcher, as it is a wonderful blend of science fiction and horror that can deliver a nerve-wracking time if you let it. Creepshow 2. Michael Gornick's Creepshow 2 is an anthology movie from 1987 that tells many of King's short stories. The movie begins with Billy, a young boy, reading the last issue of the comic Creepshow. The first story he reads is about Ray and Martha Spruce, the owners of a general store. The elder of a local Native American tribe, Benjamin Whitemoon, repays his tribe's debt to the Spruces by giving them turquoise jewelry. That night, Benjamin's nephew, Sam, breaks into the Spruce's house, kills the couple, and steals the jewelry. A cigar store Indian in the store, named Old Chief Woodenhead, comes to life and attacks Sam, scalping him. When Benjamin wakes the next morning, he sees the jewelry on his bed and Old Chief Woodenhead back to his original form, but with a blood-stained knife and Sam's scalp. Grateful? He wishes the warrior to have a peaceful afterlife. Meanwhile, Billy buys a Venus flytrap bulb at the town post office after seeing it advertised in the comic. The creep then appears behind the counter to narrate the second story, about a blob that devours 4 college students who had decided to raft on a desolate lake. Billy then heads home but is stopped by bullies who destroy his Venus flytrap bulb. Angered, he kicks one of the bullies in the groin and runs, while the creep creeps from behind a tree to tell the next story. Annie Lansing accidentally runs over a hitchhiker while rushing home from her affair to meet her husband, George, hoping that no one saw her. She continues, but the hitchhiker suddenly appears in her window, thanking her for the ride. She speeds away, but he appears again on her car roof, trying to get a hold of her. Whatever she does, she is unable to shake him off, and she finally slams him into a tree repeatedly. When she reaches home, the hitchhiker appears again, thanking her for the ride and attacks her. When George comes home, he sees her dead from carbon monoxide poisoning. Back in the present, Billy, still being chased by the bullies, leads them to a vacant lot full of Venus flytraps. The plants swallow the bullies as the creep cackles in glee and drives away. Creepshow 2 does not get the attention its predecessor does, probably because of its modest budget of $4 million. Though it only had half the budget of the first film, Creepshow 2 lives up to the first film's legacy and will give you King's certified chills and thrills.
He came here to destroy us, to make us
Needful Things. In Castle Rock, Maine, a mysterious man named Leland Gaunt opens his antique store called Needful Things, in exchange for the things that people really want, like a toy that predicts horse races, or an item that is an exact replica of a long-lost and loved thing. Gaunt asks for a small amount of money and a favor. These favors were usually pranks he asked to play on their neighbors, though it might seem innocent. These pranks soon snowballed into a riot across the town as people became paranoid and suspicious about everyone. The one who doubts Gaunt is the sheriff, Alan Pangborn, whose fiancée Polly has been manipulated against him by Gaunt. Will Gaunt's devious manipulation set the town of Castle Rock on fire, or will common sense prevail thanks to Alan? Only Needful Things holds the answer. Directed by Fraser C. Heston, Needful Things released in 1993 and is an adaptation of King's 1991 novel. Nearly all of King's adaptations use the same title as the books, so unless we say otherwise, you know what to assume. Due to the critics not liking this movie, it sort of fizzled out, but we can assure you that if you like horror but don't like ghosts and jump scares, Needful Things is what you need. Apt Pupil. Todd Bowen, a high school student, finds out that his neighbor Arthur Denker is a former Nazi named Kurt Dusander and is a fugitive hiding from his war crimes. Todd begins to blackmail Dusander into sharing his stories of participating in the Holocaust. As Todd spends more time with Dusander, his grades begin to fall, and his relationships with his peers begin to deteriorate. Dusander blackmails Tom into getting better grades, threatening to expose his bad grades and unhealthy interest in Nazism. The threat works, but the school counselor insists on seeing his parents, and Dusander pretends to be his grandfather to cover Todd's tracks. One night, a homeless person discovers Dusander's secret, and he decides to kill him. During the murder, Dusander suffers a heart attack and calls Todd, who finishes his job and hides the body in Dusander's home. Dusander is rushed to the hospital where a death camp survivor recognizes him. Cops search his house, find the body and evidence to confirm his identity, and arrange an extradition to Israel. Having no way out, Dusander commits suicide. French sees Dusander's face in the newspaper and confronts Todd about lying to him. Todd silenced him by threatening to tell everyone that French made sexual advances towards him. Apt Pupil was first published in the book of short stories, Different Seasons, in 1982 and adapted into a movie by Bryan Singer in 1998. The movie taps into the horror of war and how innocent curiosity can lead down a sinister path if not exercised with great caution. (1922). Set in the titular year, Wilfred Hames, a farmer in Hemmingford, has a huge disagreement with his wife Arlette over selling their farm and moving to Omaha. Arlette is for the idea, while Wilf is against it. He is so against it that he convinces his 14-year-old son Henry to kill her, telling him that he'd have a better relationship with his girlfriend Shannon without his disapproving mother in the way. The father-son duo kills her with a butcher's knife and dumps her body in a well, where rats nibble at her. Henry eventually gets overtaken by guilt and runs away with his pregnant girlfriend Shannon. Wilf is too in the throes of depression, and his house and farm become infested with rats. A rat bites his hand, leading to its amputation. The ghost of Arlette tells him that Shannon and Henry had to resort to robbery to sustain themselves, and Shannon was killed during one of their heists. Heartbroken, Henry killed himself beside Shannon. Wilf sells his farm and moves to Omaha, where 8 years later, the ghosts of Henry, Arlette, and Shannon appeared with the same butcher knife he first used, and Henry tells him that Wilf's death will be quick. A fantastic commentary on grief and guilt. Zach Hilditch's 1922 was released on Netflix in 2017. A lack of a theatrical release robbed 1922 of its well-deserved fame and acclaim, but you get to fix it now. So go watch the movie. If not for King, then for the wonderful acting of Thomas Jane. Christine, John Carpenter's 1983 movie about King's 1983 novel. Christine begins with a 1958 Plymouth Fury killing 2 workers at an automobile factory. Years later, high schoolers Arnie and Dennis pass by the car at a sale in George LeBay's house. LeBay sells the car to Arnie, telling him that the car's name is Christine. Arnie buys the car and begins working on it in a local garage owned by Will Darnell. Arnie's obsession with the car begins to change his behavior negatively. Curious and worried about his friend, Dennis asks LeBay about the car. LeBay tells him that the car was owned by his brother, who was obsessed with it too. But his 5-year-old niece choked to death inside it, and unable to handle the loss, his brother and sister-in-law killed themselves. Arnie begins a relationship with Leigh, who also almost chokes to death in the car and vows never to get inside it. One night, Arnie's bullies vandalize the car, but Christine fixes herself up the very next day, and within 2 days, she kills all the bullies. Leigh and Dennis begin to collude to destroy the car, as Arnie's behavior and sanity keep getting worse. Who do you think will win? A boy's obsession with his paranormal car, or the power of friendship? Put on Christine to find out. With an insight into old teenage culture, Christine will soon make you question your relationship with your vehicles. Dolores Clyborn. Dolores Clyborn accepts a cleaning job at the elderly and paralyzed Verna Donovan's house. She plans to save enough money to leave her abusive alcoholic husband Joe with her daughter Selena. One day, she finds out that Joe molested Selena and decides to leave, but all her savings are stolen by Joe. When she confides in Vera, she implies that she took her husband's life not long ago, and Dolores should do the same. Dolores provokes Joe and leads him to fall into a well. Years later, Dolores is found by the mailman brandishing a rolling pin over Vera's body. She's arrested by Detective Mackey, who is bitter over not arresting her for her husband's death years ago. She requests that Selena support her in her trial, but Selena, who had forgotten about Joe's mistreatment, doubts her mother's innocence. Eventually, her memories come back to her, and she makes an effective argument for her mother's case. Directed by Taylor Hackford, Dolores Clyborn is about the everyday horrors of child abuse, evil parents, domestic abuse, and alcoholism. You'll turn on the movie for Jennifer Jason Leigh and Kathy Bates' excellent acting, but will stay for the non-linear storytelling of King and Hackford. Thinner. Billy Halleck, an obese lawyer, accidentally runs over Suzanne, a Romanian woman. He is tried and acquitted in court thanks to his friendship with the cops and the judge. Suzanne's father Tadzu places a curse on Billy by touching his face and saying, "thinner." Billy begins to lose weight terribly, with nothing stopping his weight loss. He also realizes that his wife Heidi is having an affair with his doctor, Mike Houston. Billy tries to convince Tadzu to remove the curse, but he refuses and kicks him out. So he enlists his client, mafia boss Janelli, to terrorize him. Janelli kills Tadzu's dogs, kidnaps his great-granddaughter Gina and her husband, forcing Tadzu to come up with a cure. Tadzu mixes Billy's blood in a pie and tells him that he can transfer his curse to anyone who eats it. So, Billy feeds it to his unfaithful wife Heidi. Unfortunately, his daughter eats the pie too. Overcome with grief, Billy is about to eat the pie when Mike arrives, flustered to find Billy instead of Heidi. Now convinced of their affair, Billy invites Mike in for a piece of pie. Directed by Tom Holland, Thinner is a critically underappreciated film that covers the body horror subgenre in King's extensive horror career. Though the plot may seem rushed at times, Thinner has to be watched for the spectacular makeup by Bob Layden and Greg Canham. In the Tall Grass, Count DeMuth drives his pregnant sister Becky to San Diego, where she intends to give her baby up for adoption. On their way, they hear a young boy shouting for help in a field of tall grass. Intending to help the boy, whose name is Tobin, the siblings enter the field, only to realize that it has some supernatural qualities to it. They seem to keep getting unnaturally far as they eventually get lost. Becky meets Tobin's father Ross, who tells her to stay close. Eventually, Travis, the father of Becky's child, arrives to look at them. Rationality and all laws of science begin to bend inside the tall grass. What is its secret? What nefarious beings are hidden inside the tall grass? We'd love to tell you more, but we'd hate to spoil this wonderful genre-bending film for you, so go watch it for yourself. Directed by Vincenzo Natali, In the Tall Grass has a creamy Easter egg. At around 1 hour and 13 minutes, you can hear a low chanting of the words, "We are the grass." The movie is an adaptation of the 2012 novella by Stephen King and his son Joe Hill, a direct-to-Netflix movie. This flick too missed out on a theatrical release and all the press that comes with it. If you like time loops and movies that take your mind for a loop, In the Tall Grass is the movie for you. Marvelous verdict. We hope this list satisfied all your King needs. Did we leave out any of your favorites? If so, let us know in the comments below and we'll make sure to include them in our next list of Stephen King adaptations. We'll be back with more awesome stuff, and until then, hasta la vista.